Good morning. My name is Phil Porter. I'm former director of Mackinac State Historic Parks. It's my pleasure to share with you some of the fascinating stories about Mackinac's rich history through a series of brief fireside chats. So we're going to begin today talking about historic restoration and specifically about the building that we're in right now, which is the Officers' Stone Quarters. Mackinac has a long and rich and fascinating history, but what's particularly special about Mackinac is that there are many of the physical remnants of that history still here today. The buildings, the spaces, the landscapes are here, and they really help to document that rich history. The building we're in right now, the Officers' Stone Quarters, is the oldest public building in the state of Michigan. Construction on the building was begun during the American Revolutionary War, and the building was finished several years later by the Americans when they took over the fort. As we go outside and take a look around the building, I'll talk more about why it was built and some of the interesting restoration history that's associated with this building. During the American Revolutionary War, the British moved their fort and their community from the mainland, from modern-day Mackinac City, to Mackinac Island. They moved it here during the war and because of the American Revolution. British troops over there were scared to death that they would be attacked and captured by American troops. If you've been to colonial Michilimackinac, you know that it is low, close to the water, made of wood, not particularly defensible. And they wanted to move to Mackinac Island because they could take advantage of this high bluff that we're on and the great natural harbor that's down below. So they began moving buildings over and began constructing new buildings beginning in 1780. And in the summer of 1781, they began constructing this building, the Officers' Stone Quarters. You know that it was built during the war because of the nature of the way that the building was constructed. If you have a chance to look at the building later on, you'll notice that at the base, the walls are about 8 feet thick. They were designed to withstand a potential attack by American troops and cannonballs that might come flying off the ships from the harbor below. The British never finished completing the building. They ran out of money, and the building remained dormant for many years until the Americans took over in 1796. By 1800, they finished the building, put the roof on, and the building that we're looking at today is pretty much the way it looked in 1800 when the Americans finally finished construction of the building. Restoration of the Officers' Stone Quarters has taken place over time, really began in earnest during the American Bicentennial in 1976. When we do restoration, we try to combine two sources of information. One is the documentary evidence, what the photographs and the historic records tell us about that building. But you also try to read the building and see what does the building itself tell us about its own history. And what's fascinating is when the documentary history and the physical history come together. And that's what happened several years ago when we were doing some investigation up in the attic. In 1842, a soldier here at the fort named William Brenschutz did a bird's eye drawing of Fort Mackinac. He showed this building and he showed on the roof a weather vane that was in the shape of a fish. Long gone by the time we were doing restoration. But when I was up in the attic, I began looking around and I noticed that there was a hole in the roof, now covered with shingles. That hole was a round hole that is exactly where the pole went that held the fish weather vane. And so we turned the project over to our fort blacksmith, and they in turn built the fish weather vane that is still on the roof today.